Hi, my name is Kira Lescu, and I have been an entrepreneur for 25 years now, actually more than 25 years. And in order to successfully navigate that journey, there are two things that were really important that I had to be able to do. The first one was to mitigate the effects of stress, regardless of what was going on in my life. And the second one was to successfully navigate a midlife crisis. And to do that, I learned a lot of skills, especially around meditation and other styles of healing. And that was one of the things that was a competitive advantage for me that allowed me to do this successfully when a lot of other people around me were facing incredible challenges. And I watched colleagues go through major health crises, heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, addictions, nasty divorces, losing access to their kids, and sometimes losing their jobs or their businesses, and sometimes, ending up in really not a good place. And the truth is that all of it was preventable. Now, some of the divorces may have happened and some of the split ups, but instead of being acrimonious, they could have been a lot more cooperative. My own divorce was, it was sad, and I'd prefer it didn't happen, but it was a graduation rather than a sign that something had gone wrong. Because I'd learned as much as I could from that relationship, and no further growth was possible there for me. So, it was just time to move on. So, you are likely here right now because you can relate to some of the following things. Maybe you're feeling a discontent that you can't really put your finger on. Maybe you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling bored with life, or just completely overwhelmed. Or maybe you just, outright are willing to admit that you're stressed. So, if any of these apply to you, or even anything in that vicinity, you are going to learn things on this live stream and in this free class that are going to help you. So, first of all, we're going to help with understanding some of the things and the ways in which both of these things affect you and how they're different. And we're also going to do a short meditation at the end. So, don't worry if you've never meditated before, you don't actually have to do it. You can just listen if you want to. But whether you're a complete beginner and never tried meditating before, or you're experienced, this is a great meditation, and I recommend you at least keep your mind open to it. So I will also be, so here's some stories that you might relate to. So I was going through a very difficult and actually kind of nasty sale of my business, my last business that I owned. And I was speaking to a bunch of peers, other business owners, about this. And then they're like, how are things going? I'm like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened. And I'm just kind of calmly telling this story. And they're freaking out. They're like saying, how can you just say that so calmly? Like, I'd be having a nervous breakdown. I'd be in the hospital. I'd be having a massive fight right now. Like, I couldn't handle the stress of that. If all these things happened to me. And the other four people in the group were nodding their heads in agreeing. And two of them asked me at the same time, how can you just stand there and tell this story so calmly? Aren't you stressed? And I was like, well, yeah, I am kind of stressed, but I meditate, so it doesn't affect me as much as it used to. In fact, it doesn't really affect me at all. And two of them said, I need to learn this. And one of them said, not only I need to learn this, but can you help my staff learn this? Because I would love it if they could feel the way you do when they're really faced with difficult situations and a lot of pressure. So I said, you know what, I suppose I can. I'm a certified yoga teacher. I've been meditating. By this time, I'd had over 6,000 hours of experience of meditation. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I can put something together that's going to help your staff so that they understand what's going on and have some skills to stop it. So that was my first client specifically for meditation. I did a workshop with their staff on basic skills to recognize how stress affects decision making and some basic skills to get themselves in a better state quickly and to understand when they're headed down that path so they could stop before it goes too far and do something about it. And once I saw the change in them and how positively it affect them in a relatively short period of time, I knew that there was a really great need for this. So I developed programs that would help people with similar skills. And honestly, that was the start of the Eagle Institute. Now, there's a few different kind of people that have really benefited from doing this kind of work and working with some of our programs. The first was a person who was like Barry. Now, Barry was an entrepreneur. He was actually pretty successful, but he'd just been through a lot of really hard and challenging things in his life, in his personal life, as well as in his business life. And it was just overwhelming and too much. And he was exhausted. He had a hard time staying on topic when we were speaking together. And even his body language really showed that, like, he was just so tired and kind of beaten down by things. And in his own words, he was getting about 1 day of actual work done, despite the fact that he was putting in more than 12-hour days every day when I met him. And you know what? That's typical for someone who's experiencing extreme levels of stress that result in burnout or lead to burnout. And even in his own words, that was where he was at. So once we started to talk a little bit more, he began to reveal with me his hopes and his dreams and his visions for what he wanted and how he wanted his life to be better. But he felt like he was just so exhausted and a little bit, hard to believe that those things were even possible, even though he held this glimmer of hope that he could do that. Now, Barry was experiencing was burnout. And because he was able to admit it, it was actually a lot easier and faster for him to do something about it. Many people that are like Barry can't even admit that they are in burnout or that they are even stressed because there's a stigma around it. And that's really unfortunate because these are signs that things are not right. And luckily, Barry cared enough about himself to want to feel better and to want to do something about it. So he was able to do something before it started affecting things a lot more than it already was. The truth is, and he knew it, that when you're in burnout, you don't really have the resources to give anybody or anything else the attention and time they deserve, which was true for his business, but also for other things that were important to him in his life, such as relationships and, hobbies and, just enjoying life and having the time and the energy to do more than just go to work and be exhausted and come home and like try and do it all over again. So with some mindfulness and action techniques and some meditation training and some theory of constraints on himself and his business, Barry started to see some positive results in himself when a very short period of time, which ultimately led to some positive things happening in his business that, hadn't really been happening for a while. He started to take steps to feel fulfilled. He started to feel more energy, and he started letting go of the perception of what he thought successful people worked like and how they actually operated in the world. And luckily, he started to get his enthusiasm back. The business started seeing results that it hadn't in a while, and he was able to take things off his plate. Some things that shouldn't have been on there in the first place, and some that he just kind of let it slide. So he was able to either eliminate them entirely or hold other people accountable for them. And then he had a lot more time and energy. And new orders began to come in, and new projects or projects that he'd wanted to do for a while started getting done, not just in the business, but in his personal life as well. Things that had been on his to-do list, sometimes, some cases for years, 2-3 years, were starting to get done. And the truth is that all it took was a decision and following through on to learn how to manage the levels of stress that he was experiencing. And once he was able to manage himself, that's when the circumstances around him started to change. And he started thinking differently and making different decisions. And as a result of that, got completely different outcomes in every area of his life. One of the important things, if you are in a position of business leadership or a leadership role, is the theory of constraints component. So I'm also trained in that, as well as extensive training in meditation, and they dovetail so incredibly nicely because theory of constraints is a practical application of how to ensure that you don't get into that stress mode. And that's something that high performers do. They do not allow themselves to experience high levels of stress very often. So with Barry, within 3 months, he had seen significant improvements in every area of his life. He was feeling better. He was happier. He was more optimistic. He was in better shape. He was looking after his body better. He was eating better. He was exercising better. He had more time for relationships. He was reaching out to people and spending time with people that were a support community that he hadn't in a while. He was working less, and the business was more successful. So that's, if you're in some level of stress, like, it's not just usually one area of life that it's affecting everything. And when you start to stop that cycle, you get to a point where you're on an upward spiral rather than a downward spiral. So, if that's you and you recognize some of these things, you can be like Barry and you can get yourself out of this. So I want to tell you another story about a lady named Chloe. And Chloe came to me actually because she'd seen a lot of my posts on Facebook. And she had multiple stressors in several areas of her life. But she was a little different than Barry. She had an intellectual understanding of the circumstances that were going on in her life, and that she knew and felt needed to change. But the changes, despite understanding what was going on, the changes weren't happening with the existing tools that she had in her life. And some of these situations, again, had kind of been going on for years. Now, she had a deep desire to get past these roadblocks and to get to the point where she could live and lead the kind of life that she knew that she was capable of doing. And since I'd had some very effective tools at doing something very similar to what she was trying to do, I offered to help her. I'm like, do you want to get past this? And she's like, yes, of course, but I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I've tried so many different things. So I said, well, I know some things that aren't commonly known. Do you want some training on them? And she said, yes. So I trained her on some specific meditations and some specific healing processes that were curated just for the situation she was in. And then within a few months, she was able to do some things that she hadn't been able to do, quite frankly, for years, despite having a really, I would say, succinct and deep understanding of the issues in her life and the situations that just weren't working for her. So she was able to say no to some certain situations, but rather than, either being too forceful and sort of being very dramatic or over too strong, or being passive and avoiding things, she was able to find that middle point where she could speak her truth, like, this isn't working for me, but do it in a way that was loving and kind for herself and for the other people involved. So, as with many people that go through these process, she was able to make really incredible progress in a short period of time in her life, and do things that weren't possible with an intellectual understanding. And she was able to do it with a level of mindfulness and balance, saying what needs to be said, but without being over dramatic about it. And she was able to make decisions and, move forward on a number of different things that were kind of stuck and get past that. Now, of course, the healing continues, and she continues to use techniques that she's learned for ongoing healing to make sure that this doesn't happen. Not to make sure it doesn't happen in the future, but to live the life that she's capable of living. And there often is, a lot for many people, more than just a little bit that requires healing. So, which one do you relate most to here? Do you relate to Barry Burnout, who's just maybe stressed or overwhelmed or exhausted with his life? Or do you relate to Chloe Crisis, who has an issue that needs to be addressed, and it was causing stress, and often it does? But other than those issues, there wasn't stress from a lot of other areas in her life. It was a personal growth issue that she needed to address and deal with. So if you aren't sure, stay tuned, because we're going to share a bit more about what stress looks like and what midlife crisis looks like. So Barry's case was an extreme case of stress and overwhelm, which leads to burnout. And Chloe was actually going through a midlife crisis. So let's get into what the difference is between stress and midlife crisis. So, of course, as I said, a midlife crisis can be very stressful. I can speak from my own personal experience that it was, because you're challenged to do things that you're really not comfortable with. But despite having years and decades of experience and handling stress and mitigating stress, that's not enough in and of itself to solve and get through a midlife crisis. So, if you're stressed, you can learn mental and emotional skills that, regardless of what's going on in your life, you can walk through these situations without taking on a lot of stress. And many people actually find that they start changing the things in their life. So the things that are causing stress just aren't there anymore. But for some people, honestly, that's just not possible. You may have a family member that's not well, that is causing you a lot of stress, and you can't change that. You might do a line of work where ongoing stress is just part of it. Some people have jobs like that, and you just need to learn the skills not to take it on. Other people can, choose to leave situations and get rid of the stress. Regardless, if you learn to deal with the stress first, then you can make better decisions for what's appropriate for you. And if stress is your issue, once people learn skills to mitigate stress and stop the effects, it just really doesn't happen anymore. And if it does, you have skills to get rid of it. And often, not often, almost every time that people do learn these skills to mitigate stress, they realize how much time they've been wasting on doing things that weren't effective, and how much more they were capable of doing when they weren't stressed. So recently working with a couple executives on stress mitigation. And as was with typical, once they got into it for about 6 to 8 weeks, they started to realize that their work was getting done in 50% of the time that it was previously. They were getting higher quality work done. They were getting home on time. They were able to spend more time with their families. They actually recognized a lot of mistakes that were being made at work within their department. Now, they weren't the department lead at this point, but they recognized things that weren't working appropriately in the department. So they worked with themselves and the area that they had control over, and made changes and started doing things in a way that because they were now thinking differently. And this is a really important part of stress. You use a different part of your brain when you're relaxed and alert than you do when you're stressed. And so in this more relaxed and alert state, she was able to think differently. What that resulted in is she was asked to take on more responsibility and got a promotion because people recognized around her that she was getting stuff done far more effectively than everybody else. And within the next few months, she was able to lead people in her department through the changes that she'd made to mitigate stress. And the department was performing at a level that it hadn't had in quite some time. I think it was like almost 10 years. So typically my clients tell me that they work 50% less or more. Some people tell me they can get their jobs done in half the time that they used to, with better outcomes and better results. And that they feel better, their health improves, their relationships improve, and they just overall feel better. So if stress is your issue, then learning the skills to mitigate the effects of stress and or stopping some of the circumstances that are causing the stress makes you feel better. And you see those improvements. Most people that do this have to learn some type of meditation, as did the examples that I'm sharing with you here. These clients learn some very simple meditations. They also learn some mindfulness in action. And as they progressed, they liked the way they felt through meditation. So they started to do more and more of that because they saw the leverage. They saw that investing, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes in meditation was saving them hours and hours and hours at work. And it was a really good payoff for their time. The first thing that beginners need to learn to do is to create calm. As I've indicated, the brain thinks differently when it's calm. You use different parts of your brain. When you are continuously stressed, you activate the fight or flight cycle in the brain. And they've actually done functional MRIs and MRIs of people, the same person, whether they're under stress or not, and the neurons, the number of connections in the brain, they actually pull back. You literally aren't as smart when you're stressed. So that's the difference. And learning meditation is the fastest way to stop those effects. And it's the most reliable way. And it's also the most accessible. There are other things you can do to support this. Obviously, living a healthy lifestyle, getting enough sleep, eating properly, all those things help. But if you're in the middle of a situation or you've just gone through one, you need to do something right then and there. And meditation is accessible for people almost no matter what they're doing. So creating calm is the basis for gaining the further skills necessary. So all our programs, we teach creating calm. We teach people to understand how their body is physiologically responding to stress and to stop it. Now, that's not always the case with all meditations and all styles of meditations. Some of them try to teach you things without explaining what they are, or in my opinion, they try to do practices that are a little bit more advanced that don't directly deal with the stress. So I know tons and tons of meditations. The ones that we teach people to do are geared towards, first of all, the level you're at, and we help you assess that. And we create calm first, which is the foundation of all the other stuff. And you know what? That makes meditation pleasant and enjoyable. And, most people say, I can't believe this, but I'm actually looking forward to this. And over the years, I've had clients call me up and say, can we do the creating calm exercise right now? I don't want to wait until I see you next. And I'm like, you know how to do it. You can do it on your own. You don't need to phone me. Just go do it. And they're like, oh yeah, that's so awesome. So if you really want to have high performance states, you need to learn to stop stress. High performers experience very low levels of stress and not often. So when we look at they do studies of high performers, if you on a scale of 1 to 10 for stress levels, they report generally experiencing a level 1, meaning almost no stress, and occasionally 2 out of 10 on stress. When I talk to most executives, I talk to groups where the average in the group is 9 point something out of 10. I've talked to one group where it was 10 out of 10. But the average is certainly well into 7 or 8 out of 10 when I talk to most people that are in leadership roles. This is not helping. This is making life unnecessarily difficult. And it's getting in the way of the things that are going to give you the big growth and honestly the lifestyle you want. Like, why are you doing this in the first place? We're doing it because we want, things that are pleasurable in life. So if the journey's not pleasurable along the way, then the outcomes just aren't going to be either. So if this is you and you want to learn how to do this, we are going to do a short meditation after I've done talking here. So stay tuned for that. And at the end, we'll share with you how you can access additional programs that we have to help you learn these skills. And I just want to iterate, it is skills and practices and techniques. So midlife crisis. So you can do all this stuff for midlife crisis, and you probably will have to, but in and of itself, it's not enough because something different is happening. So if you try to make external changes in a midlife crisis, which most people that are experiencing stress to some extent do or can do, it's not going to get any better because there's something different going on. A midlife crisis is an invitation to go into the parts of yourself, in the parts of your mind, your emotions, your consciousness that you're just not aware. And you may have a vague sense of awareness that something isn't right. You might be completely blind to the way you're operating in certain parts of your life and decisions you're making and the way you interact with the world. Or like Chloe Crisis, you may be able to articulate it really clearly, but you're still doing it over and over and over again. So the purpose of a midlife crisis is to go into our weaknesses and to heal them and change them so that they no longer have any impact on our lives. And you can get to that point. That's how you know you successfully reach the other side of a midlife crisis, is that you have those situations that used to come up and they just don't affect you anymore. You make different decisions and you don't experience the turmoil and stress from them. And you have complete freedom, honestly. Other people just don't affect you. So I'm going to share my story now and why I help people with this. So I was having a meeting with the person who is, it was a man I was married to and was my business partner at the time. And we were talking about business growth and vision for the business and business strategy, but also our vision for our personal lives as well, because they were pretty closely connected. And as the conversation progressed, I had this realization that he wasn't going to do any of the things that we were talking about, but he was going to let me continue to believe that he was going to, and that we were going to do these things for as long as I allowed this to happen. I was sick and did not want to hear what, he was saying. And I didn't want to admit to myself what was going on. The truth was, I was so proud of what we had built together. I loved the foundation that we'd laid for the business. I loved the foundation that we'd laid for our life. But I knew that for me, that was just the beginning. And I was really looking forward to, and I put a lot of time and effort in doing things that I really wasn't all that thrilled about because of what was going to come next. And we were just on that verge of what was going to come next and be really fun for me. I loved growth. And to grow a business, you need to grow yourself. Like, to grow anything in life, you need to grow parts of yourself. And you can't grow unless you continue to face things about yourself and to make those differences. And I'd had a lot of experience at it, and I'd seen success at it, and I love that. But I instantly knew that if I stayed where I was, there isn't going to be any more growth. I wouldn't be able to grow personally. The business wasn't going to grow. I was going to be stagnated and stuck for as long as I chose to stay there. And I was numb. I just couldn't believe what was happening. And I couldn't believe that I was facing a really uncomfortable decision. I couldn't speak, and I felt really angry, and I left that meeting without saying anything. So it took me a few months to come to terms with and speak my truth. But shortly after that meeting, I just sat with myself and said a little prayer. I said I wanted to live the life that I was capable of living, and I wanted my marriage to be healed, and I wanted to be all that I could be. And then, because I was a really good manifester, I trusted that and let it go. And it came very apparent to me over the next couple months that the only way that this was going to change, and the only way it was going to get better, there wasn't going to be any magic divine intervention. I was going to be the one that was going to have to make it different. And for me, that meant that I was going to have to leave. So less than 2 months later, I asked for a divorce. And honestly, at that point, I did not care what it cost or what it lost. I knew that I trusted in my ability to manifest. I trusted in my ability to create. I knew that I had a bunch of skills, and I trusted that I could get the life that I dreamed of if I did the inner work to get there. So to get to the point where I could make that decision, I had already done and learned a lot of techniques to grow myself and to stay calm. And of course, meditation was a big part of that. Both the reducing stress meditation styles, as well as styles that actually heal things and eliminate patterns, as well as some other healing techniques. So once I made that decision, I was on a fast track journey to heal parts of myself that I just needed to be done, and to release conditions and release the patterns within me that were causing me to be where I was in the first place, and to repeat negative patterns and patterns that weren't helping me over and over again. So that's the crux of the midlife crisis, is doing the internal work to heal those things so that they no longer affect you, so that you are able to say yes to things and say no to things that are really appropriate for being the best person that you can be. And honestly, for most people, it's kind of a little bit of a cliche, but it does involve inner child healing, or patterns that we've learned very young in life, or decisions that we've made along our life that we're reliving over and over again. And so that's one of the things, that you're dealing with a midlife crisis issue, is that you see issues. And I've seen so many people, like they get divorced, and then they date a whole bunch of people, and then they say, I'm not dating anymore because all people are like this, or everybody's like this, or this thing keeps happening to me over and over again, and I'm just not doing that. I'm not playing that game anymore. But rather than doing the healing work, they just try to opt out. So what happens is they have a friend come into their life that takes on that role, or they have a business colleague that acts in that same way, or maybe even a different family member. So they're forced to deal with it. So the issues with midlife crisis is they do not go away until you do the inner healing work. You don't get to get a pass on this one. It's do it now or do it later, but you still have to do it. Now, if you actually go into it and do the work, then things get better. You may see similar patterns or things that crop up, but they're smaller, and you can deal with them a lot quicker so that they don't have the long-term and ongoing effect. So in this process, I did a lot of things that were hard for me. And I didn't really have anybody guiding me through the process. I was able to, because I had already known a lot about meditation and other healing techniques, I was able to cobble together some different things and find something that worked. And I did successfully get to the other side. But there wasn't one place where I could go where it had a menu of options that I could pick from easily. And quite frankly, I tried a lot of things as well that, would have been effective in other situations, but they just weren't enough when dealing with a midlife crisis. So part of my midlife crisis was recognizing when people weren't being totally upfront with me and were telling me what I wanted to hear to get me to do something. So yes, that goes back to my own childhood, but I no longer tolerate those things, and I can see them a mile away and I just don't go there. So, which is something that I just wasn't that good at before. The other thing that's really been incredible about dealing with this midlife crisis was I realized that my life was really conditional in the way I felt, meaning that if I like, oh, if I, do this really well in this hobby I have, or this happens at work, or I have this kind of job, or the business is going in a certain way, I feel happy and I feel fulfilled and I feel like I can relax and enjoy myself. And if it's not, I have a ton of pressure on myself and I feel like I can't be happy until these things. As I went through the midlife crisis and successfully dealt with it, I was like, didn't matter. Like, I still had goals and dreams for what I wanted my life to be like, and I still do, but I'm happy now regardless. And it doesn't even matter how other people treat me. Things that used to really upset me in the past, I'm like, why are they treating me like this? And I'd go into this kind of victim mode at times, like, why are they doing this to me? Then I would, now it's like, nothing to do with me. I can be internally happy and their behavior doesn't really impact me that much. And I've learned to say no and to not allow people to treat me in certain ways. So a midlife crisis, again, doesn't go away unless you do the work. And the really unfortunate thing is a lot of people spend a lot of time in their life, sometimes 5 years, 10 years, even the rest of your lives, not dealing with the issues. And sometimes it's because they haven't found someone that actually understands what's going on. And they may be well-meaning, like people that I ran into that are providing them with solutions that just aren't deep enough to handle a midlife crisis. A lot of people go through a lot of drama. Like, they break up relationships. They maybe quit their job and think maybe if I get a new career. Some people start businesses or foundations or take on a really big project like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon or do an Ironman, because they think that if they have something that they're working towards, that it will make them feel better. They might spend 10 years on stuff like that, and then they accomplish it. And all of a sudden they're like, that feeling's still there. I don't feel, it feels like a hollow victory. It's because it's not that those things aren't good things to do. And it's not that you won't do those things, but if you're doing them to address the issue or to avoid addressing the issue of the midlife crisis, you won't feel the sense of fulfillment that you should feel when you're accomplishing your goals and dreams. So to go through it is the only way out of this. And that's how you can recognize that this is different than just stress or some other, personal growth issues. So if you recognize some of these things, or even if you think it might be some of these things, then you're probably dealing with a midlife crisis. And they don't always happen. They tend to happen, late 30s to up until mid 50s, but that's not always the case. For some people, it may happen at a younger age or even at an older age than that. So if you're dealing with stress and you learn the skills, you can get over it and get through it. With a midlife crisis, you need processes and tools that are specific to doing inner healing work. And yes, that sometimes does, usually involves meditation and some stress reduction skills, but you need more than that and you need deeper stuff than that. So the processes that I've curated come from a number of different techniques and a number of different backgrounds that I've learned over the past 20 plus years of doing this kind of work. I personally curate them for the people that are, going through it, appropriate to their level of work that they've done. So if you haven't done any meditation at all, meditation would be appropriate. And we do that for stress as well. It'll be appropriate to the level of experience you had, but the other healing techniques will meet you where you are. So whatever level of understanding you have about this, the techniques will help you at the level that you're at. So if you are having a midlife crisis, I will share a link to my brand new Facebook page. It's just called Midlife Crisis. But you also, in the notes for this video, there are links to both Eagle Institute website, which is all about stress reduction and burnout prevention, as well as a link to my brand new website, which I've just done called Having a Midlife Crisis, as well as links to get further help. So if you need help right away, stay on until the end of the meditation, and I'll let you know how you can get in touch with me really quickly if you think you need to. But this is something, whether you're dealing with stress or midlife crisis, this is something that it doesn't need to be the way it is right now. Stress is not normal. People that are high performers do not experience ongoing levels of stress. Stress is a sign that something is wrong. And I've heard some people say, oh, there's good stress and there's bad stress. There's stimulation. Stimulation's a good thing. Stress is a sign that something is wrong, and you need to get back to relaxed and alert, which is a high performance state. To help you do that, and to help you just deal with the midlife crisis, we're going to do a short meditation now. So this is, I love a lot of different meditations, but this is on one of my top favorite lists. It's something I practice quite a bit, and it is a loving kindness meditation. If you're familiar with meditation, sometimes this is called compassion meditation, but I personally like the words loving kindness meditation better, because I think in English it helps us to get to the crux of what it's about. And the word compassion can be a little bit misunderstood, I think, when it's translated into English. So this meditation won't be very long. So don't worry if you haven't meditated before. It'll be no more than 5 or probably about 6 minutes. So to do this, you can do it laying down, you can do it sitting, you can do it standing, but just get yourself sitting upright as comfortably as possible and locate your heart. And you can even put your hand there if you want to. So yes, your heart's on your left side, but we want just the area of the heart in the middle of the body. And just acknowledge any feelings that you feel in your heart. You might feel sadness, you might feel tired, you may even feel something positive, but just go into it and connect with it and acknowledge what's there. It's really important that we acknowledge where we're at before we start to make any changes. It actually calms the stress down considerably. And now I want you to think of a time in your life when you felt kindness, and specifically kindness for yourself. So this might be a way that you treated yourself. It may be a time when you felt that somebody else was doing something for you, where you were the receiver, and you felt kindness. You felt like you were being treated kindly. Now, it's important not to do this when you are giving it to somebody else, because this is about receiving. So tune into that feeling and that time when you were experiencing kindness for yourself. And what did that feel like? So you can just stay thinking of that memory, or maybe a couple different memories. The important part here is you stay with the feeling of kindness within your heart, in the heart area of your body, for the duration or as for as long as possible. If your mind wanders, just bring it back. If you feel a different emotion, just thank that emotion for making you aware of it, and then let it go and return your focus back to the thing that's helping you to feel loving kindness for yourself. I'm just going to be quiet for a bit, but stay focused on that feeling of kindness for yourself. Excellent work. Keep focusing on the feeling of kindness. If you find yourself thinking about something, just let that go and return back to the feeling of kindness and one or more memories if you need to. If you're new at this, you're doing a great job. If you're having a hard time staying focused on one memory, pick another one, but make sure it's about that feeling of kindness. And you can just focus on the feeling. You don't need to use a memory. Great job for sticking with it. We're almost there. And then come to a sense of completion with that meditation and return your focus back to the room. So you can practice that meditation whenever you have some time for yourself. There's certain techniques you can do when you're around other people. In the beginning stages, I don't recommend that you do that. I recommend that you, at least until you get really good at it, that you find a quiet place where you can do it on your own. You can do it for as little as a couple minutes and for as long as it feels good. I've taught some people that want to do this for hours and hours because they don't remember the last time that they felt that good. And this is a really important technique for helping to mitigate stress. There are certainly a lot of others that are, short in duration that and longer in duration that help, as well as mindfulness and action techniques that change how you respond to the world and change the way that you feel regardless of the circumstances going on around you, or help you be aware of circumstances that you can and should change. So, to get help with mitigating stress, you can, or if you just want to learn to meditate just because, you can book a call with me on theeagleinstitute.com. You can go to the section that's about meditation and stress, and there's a quiz there that you can do, which will help you identify the level of stress that you're experiencing. And there's many different links there that you can book a call with me about, just to discuss your own situation and what you want to learn. Now, just to let you know, we work with people in a couple different ways on the stress mitigating aspect. We work with people on one-to-one sessions and programs. We also work with group programs for the workplace. Or you may, have some friends you want to work with. I've worked with a few different clubs or teams that want to do this. And we can do a program that's geared to a group that wants to work together, or executives, an executive team that wants to work together, a department that wants to work together, or if it's just you. We have programs that can help you learn those skills so that you can stop it. Now, to get help with a midlife crisis, or honestly, for most people, they need to, really confirm and identify that this is what's happening. You can book a private, no obligation call with me. You can email me, Kira@KiraLescu.com. That's my private email. It comes only to me and nobody else will see it. And I do have a program for this. Right now, it's available only as one-to-one because I find that situations are really unique and people need unique solutions and they need to go at their own rate. And like I said, I curate from different techniques. So I put together, whether you just want to do a few sessions or work with me for a longer period of time, I curate based on what you need, the level that you're at in terms of knowledge about what's going on in your life, and the level of experience you have with other meditation or healing techniques or calming techniques. So it is entirely geared to you at the level you're at. So the techniques are drawn from meditation, multiple styles and disciplines, as well from other healing techniques, again, based on what you're ready for. And they're curated for the fastest impact for you, that at a rate that you can handle it. So we're not going to push you into stuff where you're so challenged that you can't handle it, but we will get you through it so that you get to the other side. And that's the most important thing in the gift and the value of working through a midlife crisis, is that there is a giant bonus and gift when you get to the other side of it. You feel better than you've ever had in your life before. You have more clarity about who you are, and you're capable of doing things that you just weren't before, and that you didn't even know that you weren't capable and that were holding you back. So most people that I've done this with, including myself, say, oh my gosh, I was, really only in first or second gear in my whole life. And now I've realized that I'm capable of so much more, and it's so much easier than I thought it was. And I can do so much. I can do whatever I choose. And they have a sense of freedom and ease that they just didn't have before. So, yeah, depending on what you need, or even if you just, you're not even sure what this is and you just need someone to talk to that understands you, there's no obligation. You don't have to work with me. Just give me a call and I'd be pleased to help you identify correctly whether or not this is what's happening. So again, we have stress reduction programs, burnout, overcoming burnout. We also have mindfulness for high performance, and you can find that on theeagleinstitute.com, and you can book a meeting with me there. For midlife crisis, if you need help now, there are links in the description below where you can go to and book a meeting with me. You can also go to the Eagle Institute on Facebook. You can book meetings with me there. And you can also, if you're just not ready to do something on it, but you just want more resources on an ongoing basis, go to the website, Having a Midlife Crisis, in the link below, or go to a Facebook page, Midlife Crisis. I post in there usually a couple times a week, either questions or resources, and you can check out the stuff that's already there and get some help, or at least get you to the point where you're ready to make a decision if you want to deal with this or not. So thanks so much for sharing class with us today. Make sure that if you know somebody that really needs this, you share this with them. And if you have any questions or comments, I will be doing more content on this. So please leave comments below. Again, please no spamming, be kind. This is about helping people. So yeah, leave us your comments and, reach out to me if you really need it, and have a beautiful rest of the day today.